Businesses are reducing their SaaS software costs dramatically by using AI. The use of AI to both transition workflows to an agent-led workflow completion, or being creative and changing the user experience and providing a AI-driven experience for people that work at your company and reducing your SaaS software cost along the way. Both outcomes reduce your cost substantially. And I'm going to provide some real life examples that I've been involved in this video. The software space has been a great flourishing industry for a long time. I worked in it for more than 20 years. I worked at Oracle, SAP, and Sage Software. These companies historically have had terrific margins and profitability, which has made them very valuable companies. If you look at their valuations, they're far more valuable than just typical businesses. You can understand why. Now, that comes at the cost of the client base. How did they become so valuable? Is that customers paid substantially for the technologies they provided. And for a long time, that's really been an equitable exchange. Software companies provided great value in their enterprise software, their connection of workflows, their connection of business departments within a company to have a single source of truth and have all that data in one system. All that was equitable. But AI is changing everything. AI really is disrupting how we work with information and how we complete workflows. Agentic AI brings agent employees into the work stream that are non-human. It's in essence a computer that's completing a task that was once done by a human being. And as people, as we use our systems, we have a different expectation now that we've used ChatGPT and Gemini for 3 years. We see how great those applications are, and they're free. You can have a paid version, but if you use Gemini, you get so much value from Gemini for free. And it really sets a different expectation as we work with enterprise systems. So software companies, I think, have a tall task ahead. How to remain relevant, how to continue to drive enough value to customers in order to sustain their businesses and grow their businesses. In this video, I wanted to show a few examples of how businesses have reduced their cost. And these are real life examples that I've been a part of. I have a professional services company. We help companies plan, strategize, and roll out AI solutions into their businesses. And I'll show you 4 examples of projects that successfully did that. And all 4 projects reduced SaaS software cost. Let me talk about why software is so expensive, why these SaaS companies continue to drive up the cost to the end customer. And in essence, why now that's a major weakness to the industry. Quick reminder, I worked at a software company, actually worked at 4. And I worked at Oracle, SAP, NetSuite, and Sage Software. I understand the licensing models quite well. I understand the whole sales cycle and customer cycle that customers go through, as well as renewals. And the cost of software is really high for a couple big reasons. First, user-based pricing. You have a population of people that need access to the system. Some users are power users and they need a lot of access. But most people are light users. They need very little access. But you pay full boat, whether the person's in the system 5 hours a day or 5 minutes a month. And that really does make it expensive. Second, module pricing. These big platforms like SAP and Salesforce, Workday, Oracle, they provide different modules you could buy. A financials user would only have access to financials. An HR user would only have access to HR. And within those modules, they have additional modules that give the company more advanced functionality. And also some optional modules like analytics. So pretty soon, a company's paying $2, $4, $10, $12,000 per year per user for each person. And if you have 1,000 employees, that adds up really fast. So the module-based pricing makes the per user cost really go up. And the last thing that I'll mention is all these companies, a key aspect to their growth is increasing your prices every year. They want to increase your prices 8, 10, 12, even up to 15%. And they're able to because they somewhat have a captive customer base. It's very difficult to move off of software platforms like an SAP, an Oracle, Workday, or a Salesforce. So they somewhat have a lot of leverage on customers, and they tend to drive very high renewal increases. In fact, all these companies have a substantial organization within them where that whole organization, all they do is work on renewals. They have strategies on how to increase your price year after year. But when we have a disruption moment like we're having now with AI, where there is an exodus that has begun, where you're moving users away from accessing this enterprise software, it really changes the whole relationship between customer and software company. And it begins to give the company, the client, the customer, much more leverage. And that leverage you can use at this time to reduce your costs with the SaaS software company. That is a moment in time that we are going to look back and really see how much was gained over the next 5 years. I think the cost of software is going to substantially go down, and the usability of the software is going to dramatically improve. That's what's exciting about AI. We're at the beginning of an era that reminds me of other eras in the past. When we had the internet launch, be created, we took systems that were on a client server architecture into a cloud-based architecture. So then we can go from logging into a system where the application ran on our local computer, and you just had computers around the world logging into a server. It was very heavy or expensive on the network assets you had to have. You'd have to have on-premise servers. You'd have to have an army of technology people to manage this big system you had. We cut over to cloud-based software, SaaS software, and it drastically reduced cost. And these SaaS companies were disruptors to the previous legacy customers or software companies. For example, Salesforce, early in their history, a big part of their marketing message was you could avoid perpetual licensing, upfront licensing for software. And Salesforce was able to effectively reduce your upfront cost, and then you move from an on-premise CRM system over to their SaaS-based, cloud-based system, which really reduced your cost. You didn't have to have servers. You didn't have to maintain the software. Salesforce did that. They maintained the database. So a lot of costs were taken away from the customer. It was a win for the customer. The customer got lower cost, more benefits, because now the administration of the software was taken off their plate. And they got software that was quite easy to access. You just open up a browser, you get internet, you get a secured login, and you're in your application. So it was a win-win for the customer. And the previous generation of software companies, some of them really got hurt by the whole move to cloud. If they could not adapt to the cloud, they were really taken out. The pecking order was really reestablished. We're having that type of event now with AI. And I encourage you to get as familiar with AI and begin projects around AI so that your leverage on software companies goes up. And that leverage and your overall AI cloud projects will enable you to move a lot of users, a lot of workflows to AI, which is where we're going. I don't think anybody's going to argue. AI is the now and is the future. And the sooner that you go into the future paradigm of business computing, business process, workflow management, the more you're going to save, the happier your users are going to be, the more profitable your company is going to be as well. So it's a really exciting time in the software industry. and overall in the technology space. The first real life example I'll talk about is for a client that I had, and the client was about a 67,000 employee company that is publicly traded, and they have an entertainment business with locations across the US and in Europe. Their operations were to provide entertainment, and they had field managers spread among many locations in the US and in Europe. Those managers had access to their ERP system, and oftentimes they'd have to access the system to look up policies on certain situations, especially since this client provided inexperienced food and there was FDA regulation they had to follow. They also had to do other things as they onboarded and hired employees in the field. And the employees really did not like using the ERP system. It was quite cumbersome. They had to use it on their desktop because it was just too much to try to do on a phone. What we did in this situation is we created a chat app that was connected privately to all the data that this customer had and that was going to be needed by the manager to access. Standard operating procedures, policy guidelines, and also the whole workflow to onboard and offboard employees, because this particular business had seasonal peaks and they would have spikes of seasonal employees. And the project was extremely successful. In essence, we took 600 managers off the ERP system. The AI solution ended up costing the client less than $20,000. And the operating cost of the solution was $3,600 in consumption through their cloud infrastructure partner. And the drastic change in cost was really well received by the client. More importantly, the managers that use the application were really happy with how easy the application was. We also instituted a really good feedback loop, and we were able to continue to improve the app. So as the managers gave us feedback, we could improve the application and give them exactly what they needed to do their job. They didn't have to use a desktop computer to access their big ERP system. They could do everything from their phone, which was really useful because they were in the field doing the work that needed to be done, managing their people, managing their teams, and managing the business. So that was a big win. And that project occurred 3 years ago with the technology and the software we had back then. In today's era, we could have provided far more, but it just goes to show that some businesses have been reducing their cost for years now. One big reason why AI has become so popular so fast and is disrupting SaaS software so quickly is that we're moving from a process-oriented workflow to an outcome-based workflow. When we go to a chatbot, we typically start with the conclusion, what we're looking for. What is the piece of information that you want? Or if you're more advanced, you may go to Claude Code or Gemini and say, I'd like to build an application. And that's where the process begins with AI. You start with the outcome first, and then you work with your AI application to work on the steps to get to that outcome. That's a very powerful paradigm that we're under. We really are moving straight to the conclusion that we want and trying to find the most efficient path to getting to that conclusion. SaaS software companies were built on, we have a big group of people, an army of people working on a process. In many cases, this process was defined decades ago. The accounting process hasn't really changed a whole lot. The HR process, pretty close. But supply chain's exciting. Supply chain really doesn't have any big giant rules. They can be as efficient as you can be. Product development, very exciting to see AI in the product development field. But in essence, the systems from SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Workday, Intuit, NetSuite, They're taking practices that we had been following for the last 30, 40, 50 years and putting it into their software and saying, this is how you have to run the software. And I can understand why. That's how they built their systems. But now we're at the forefront of, we don't have to do it that way. We could work with what we need accomplished first, define that, and now let's go through the steps of accomplishing that task as quickly as possible. The power of AI is that we've removed a number of people that we need to complete a particular project or task. For example, if you want to develop software, historically, you had to hire software developers, software engineers, infrastructure knowledgeable people, business people. You had to do requirements gathering. It would take a long time. It would take months, if not years, to develop custom software. Today, you could do that in 2, 3 days because AI is bringing a lot of that knowledge, enabling somebody to really pilot a solution and quickly get to a demonstratable solution. And think of that power as you are building a report in financials, or you're building a new work stream within your supply chain, or you want to have a new onboarding process in HR. It's very powerful to have a new way of doing things that gives you a very clean sheet of paper to start with and a far more powerful environment to work with. That's another big reason why we're seeing the giant disruption to SaaS software, is all the exciting work is happening in AI. And in many ways, it's replacing or deeming a lot of ERP systems and processes to be irrelevant, unnecessary going forward. So the future is exciting for AI, and ERP continues to brace itself, and I should say enterprise software, which includes ERP, CRM, HR, supply chain, everything under an enterprise application space, continues to brace for how is this going to change those businesses. And judging from how the publicly traded software companies are traded, their stocks are down drastically because the market believes that the removal of those work streams and users is going to take a lot of revenue away from software companies. So the excitement of AI and how we're starting with results-based, conclusion-based, outcome-based creativity development is very powerful and is going to replace enterprise software. The second client example involved a media company that has well over 100,000 employees, and they run a centralized ERP HCM system to bring their people into one common financials, HR, and supply chain platform. And as part of this platform, the client used the analytics that were provided by the software company. It seemed quite convenient when they first rolled it out, and they used it. What they realized was that not everyone liked the analytics that this particular module provided. They judged that it was 50 people that really liked it and they were power users for this particular analytics. And in fact, the power users would basically use the plugin that was provided, export data from the ERP system and HCM system, and do their analysis in Excel. What they wanted to do was provide what employees were asking for, which was a more AI-based analytic experience, a lot like ChatGPT or Gemini. So what we did is we used an AI application referred to as Ask Data, where you can use natural language to query your data. And this was a really good solution for them in a lot of ways. First, when you use AI, one of the first things that leadership thinks about is security, access privilege. I don't want just any employee to be able to search all the data in our database. And that was most definitely a requirement. What we used was the security model that the ERP system already has and is already in place and is already completely approved by the company and their management. And the access privilege that each person using the AI analytic chat was basically following that security model. But the experience was far different. Rather than following a more menu-driven experience that they had with this analytic module, they could just ask in natural language what they were looking for. And if they had the privilege to see that data, they can have a report provided, and they can then communicate with the AI application to improve the report, change the report, and get to an end product that they wanted. And they could save the report, save it on their dashboard. It was a really successful pilot. It only took 3 weeks to complete. And in that experience, the amount of licensing that client paid for just the analytic module was $500,000. Once they removed most people away from that module and just kept the power users on it, they reduced it to $25,000 per year. So it was a substantial savings on SaaS licensing. And that's exactly why software stocks are under pressure. Software companies are under pressure is because AI has become really powerful, very capable, and is very affordable. And in that example, nearly $500,000 of revenue was taken away from this software company that sold that analytic module. The way that businesses are being run is changing drastically very fast. And just recently, I heard that there's going to be startups where it's going to be a one-person startup that achieves a particular revenue level, valuation, and ability to execute that rivals a 100-person operation. And that concept is being kicked around as potentially where we're going to go. And that's a pretty giant leap forward. For now, what we could safely expect is that AI is going to make our workflows far faster, more efficient, less expensive. And that process is going to enable businesses to reduce their operating costs, to expedite their transactions, deliver product to customers quicker, adapt to conditions that far more quickly as well. Now, for the individual, it's an exciting time as well. Careers are no longer, a career in accounting, as an example. You're going to be primarily an accountant, but you're going to be a technologist at the same time, understanding how AI works, understanding how technology works, because you're going to need to supervise all these AI agents. AI agents are very human-like, and humans make mistakes. And teams oftentimes maybe have a period of time when there's a lot of bad transactions, or maybe there's a trend that needs to be analyzed because we're seeing transactions that don't quite make sense for a business, and variances need to be explained. In those scenarios that are 100% human driven, leaders, managers are there because they have the experience, they have the knowledge in order to right the ship, to get things back on the right path, and to complete the particular assignment. With Agentic AI, that does not change. AI agents are going to be doing the process, but you still need people that understand what the agents are doing and are able to audit, manage, and make sure that we're checking that the work is being done accurately, appropriately. So careers are going to have far more technology as part of what they do. Now, that's not a big deal because I would venture to guess that just about anybody who's watching this video uses AI in your personal life. You probably go on ChatGPT, Gemini, or whichever is your favorite AI chat to look up information on history, look up if you're going to go on vacation, certain things of that destination. Maybe you want to understand a topic that's come to your life more recently. So you in your personal life have now started to use technology, agentic AI, generative AI. You've brought it into your personal life. So for it to hit the business, your business life is pretty much rational. We're going to see it, the whole generative AI, agentic AI hit our careers, hit our workflows, and change the way that we run these businesses. I've heard recently that the new concept of startups, that there's going to be startups that have 1 or maybe 10 people that will basically be able to do what businesses with 100 people are going to do. And those businesses are right now being tried, and we'll see if they work. But that's a pretty big leap forward in efficiency. And I think for some areas, it's a welcome advancement because some costs of doing business are really high. And if we can get rid of the costs there, we could allocate that capital, resources, and time to areas where it could help your business. It could help make your product better. It could help you get more customers. It could help you focus resources on ways that you can grow your business, be more profitable, and have a higher level of performance. The third and final client example is going to be with a really small business. And this small business is a real estate property management company. They rent out residential real estate. They rent it out to people who need a place to live. Now, this business is pretty mature. Renting out real estate has been done for over 100 years. And the process was quite simple, but it was laborious. It involved two people. And at times, there wasn't enough to do for these two folks. So it was a little inefficient in cost. The introduction of AI really changed things up. AI agents can handle the entire process of sending out the rent invoices to the tenants, collecting the funds, and really managing the whole billing and receipt cycle with the tenants. The vendors that would be called on occasion to manage or maintain the property, they go to a portal, they start a workflow, an agent looks at it. If they're a validated vendor, then that gets processed and it gets sent via workflow to the owner. If they're not a validated vendor, another agent picks up the task and begins to take that vendor through a qualification process. All this is for a really small business. So you don't have to be a giant company to be able to use AI. In this small business situation, the client used QuickBooks, but no longer uses QuickBooks. The reason for it is it's not necessary anymore. Instead, we use free Google Sheets that are maintaining the ledgers for this business. And the AI agents actually work far easier with Google Sheets versus the APIs provided by Intuit. In this situation, the business is reducing their costs substantially, and ownership believes they can now take on more properties. They can invest more, and they can provide more places for people to rent from them. So it's really elevated that business to have the capacity to do more, grow their business, and achieve more. Unfortunately for Intuit, it's a reduction of revenue because their software is no longer needed. Over the last couple of years, as I've met with clients, there was a high level of curiosity on what AI could do for their business. There's a lot of questions around security and how we can, in essence, get things moved over to an AI platform. But now we're in a very urgent time. Businesses now know that AI agents can be put into work streams to reduce cost, and AI in general can be used as a competitive advantage for a business. And it's also very motivating when a competitor starts using AI and really puts a client under stress of, hey, we're falling behind in the industry because one of our competitors is doing something that's really eye-opening with AI. There's a lot of reasons to really just stay engaged and be very active with AI at your company. What's great is that AI does not cost a whole lot of money. AI is relatively inexpensive. You don't have to invest large sums of money up front. Proving out these use cases is quite quick. Over the course of 2-3 weeks, you can have a pilot done. It's a fantastic time to really improve business systems because the technology is just so darn great. It's affordable. It's very quick time to value. And it's an exciting time for the industry overall. As mentioned, I worked at a number of software companies. And overall, I started to work with enterprise software in 1994. And at that time, we had character-based client-server software systems. We used spreadsheets and so forth. And to think about how we get the job done today from that point until where we're at now, it's just an absolute leap forward in how we did things. And I would say that what we've seen over the last 3 years is probably exceeds everything I saw in the previous 30. The cost of technology over long periods of time goes down, and the value that's delivered to customers and participants goes up. That's just what's happened in technology. One more example is when I was in college and I bought a computer. This is 1990. I bought a computer for about $2,400, and I got a computer, a desktop computer. And around the same time, I also bought a used little truck to get myself to and from the university I attended for about the same price, $2,400. Fast forward, that computer that I bought was a really small CPU. Storage was 40 megabytes. Everything about that computer, it wouldn't be worth $5 today. But I just bought a computer a couple of days ago, nice laptop, $499. I get a 1 terabyte hard drive, solid state. I have a CPU that has plenty of processing power, 16 gigs of RAM, $500. 1994, $2,400. And the performance was really not, you wouldn't be able to use that computer in today's era. So the technology cost has really drastically gone down on hardware. And now we're seeing it in the software business, the SaaS software business. The technology cost is going down. And that's going to come at the expense of software companies, but businesses will reap the reward. Businesses get to reduce their cost. Businesses get to use a new generation of technology that's going to help them improve their businesses. So overall, this is going to be a huge benefit to the whole business world, and why businesses cannot ignore AI. It's just too important. The AI revolution is going to change the way we do business, and the businesses that are going to flourish are those that really take AI, integrate it into their businesses, those that rethink their business and really think about what things should be done through AI and what things should be done through people managing that process. Don't object to AI. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be apprehensive. Be careful. Be complete in your research. And what's great about AI is you can pilot these ideas very quickly. You can very quickly see a demonstratable solution of what you're thinking you can use AI for. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to get to that point. The infrastructure that you would need for AI, it's provided by AWS, Azure, GCP. There's so many options there. It's become a commodity. So again, low cost. So it's an exciting time, and I encourage you to get involved. If you're a business leader, if you're a professional, if you're starting your career, if you're in school, it is a great time to be a part of the business world. And all those that get involved with AI are going to flourish. I appreciate you watching my video. If you need any of my assistance with your AI initiatives, whether you're just thinking of doing something or you need just an extra set of eyes to think about a project or review a project, I'm available. Look me up. My contact information is on my channel, and I'd be happy to assist you. Thanks again for watching, and good luck with your AI projects.